Article 2, Section 7, Maximum Annual Salary. No player contract entered into on or after the date of this agreement may provide for a salary plus unlikely bonuses in the first season covered by the contract that exceeds the following amounts. Now I'm going to summarize some basic and general rules for a few different categories, as the language is very redundant throughout this section pertaining to these categories. First and foremost, we should know that this is all pertaining to the first year of the contract, the first year of the extension, the first year after the trade. That first year of the salary in that contract is what it pertains to. For a player that has less than 7 years of service, then he can receive the greater of the two in his first year. 25% of the salary cap for that year, or 105% of his previous year's salary. Whichever is the greater of the two is what can be his maximum salary for that year, for that first year. Now, within that, you have a player that has completed 4 years of service and becomes a fifth-year eligible player, which means he's able to, if he satisfies certain criteria, he's eligible for the fifth-year 30% max salary in that first year. If he satisfies what is known as the 30% max salary criteria, which I'll talk about a little later. So he can get up to 30% as a fifth-year eligible player in the first year. For a player that has greater than or equal to 7 years of service or less than 10 years, then this is a designated veteran player. He can receive 30% of the max annual salary. He's going to either get 30% of the salary cap or 105% of his previous or last year's salary in his first season, whichever is the greater of the two. And within that, he can actually, if he satisfies criteria, one of the criteria meaning he has one or 2 years left on his contract, if it's being extended, and he also played for the same prior team throughout the duration of that, or was only played for a different team via trade, then he's eligible to receive a maximum of 35% of the salary cap if he meets that criteria that I'll also go over a little later. So that's the max 35% salary that he can get in that first year. For a player that has greater than or equal to 10 years of service, then he's eligible to receive 35% of the salary cap or 105% of his previous or last year's salary, whichever is the greater of the two in the first year of his extension. So those are all the general percents. So a player that's less than 7 years, 25% or 105%. Whichever is the greater of the two. And then the fifth year eligible can get up to 30%. And then a player with 8 or 9 years is a designated veteran players. He can get 30% or 105%. And if he has played with the same team, has 1 or 2 years left, he can get up to 35% with that max criteria, meeting that criteria. And if you have greater than or equal to 10 years, you can get 35% of the salary cap or 105%, whichever is the greater of the two of your last year's salary. So those are the general rules for everything. Now to hop into the criteria that's required for that 30% max for the fifth year eligible players or the 35% max for the designated vets. They differ based on when that first year is in play. So if the first season is covered by the contract in 2017 to 2018, then the player is named twice to the NBA All First, Second, or Third team. He's voted in twice as an All-Star starter, or the player is designated once as the NBA MVP. That's the criteria for the 30% max for fifth-year eligible players. If the first season was in 2018-2019, then as of July 1st, following his fourth season, he had to have been named to the All-NBA first, second, or third team, or was named Defensive Player of the Year in the immediately preceding season or in 2 seasons of the previous 3, or was named MVP during one of the previous 3 seasons. That's for the 30% max criteria for fifth-year eligible players. Now, for any player that is a veteran going for that 35% max criteria, then they need to have had been named to the All-NBA first, second, or third team, have been named as a Defensive Player of the Year in the previous season or in 2 of the previous 3 seasons, or had been named as the NBA MVP in order to get that designated vet 35% max criteria. Now, regarding the designated veteran player that's going for that max of 35%, I just want to reiterate that he has only changed teams during his first 4 salary cap years. If by way of trade, if he happened to trade teams at all, he needed to be with the same prior team, and then only the prior team would be able to offer that 35% max to that designated veteran. So in the event that any of those different scenarios plays out to where the salary ends up being in excess of those max salary amounts, that's what the CBA recognizes, that in the case of extensions and such, that could be the case, and in that event, that the salary plus unlikely bonuses shall be immediately deemed amended to provide for the maximum amount allowed. In such circumstance, if the extension provides for incentive compensation, the amount of likely bonuses and unlikely bonuses in the first salary cap year covered shall be reduced first on a prorated basis, and then, if necessary, the amount of base compensation provided for in the first salary cap year shall be reduced, and salaries plus unlikely bonuses in subsequent seasons are deemed amended to the extent necessary to comply with the maximum allowable increases or decreases over the amended salary plus unlikely bonuses in the first season. Section 7D says that a player and a team may provide in a rookie scale extension that the player's salary in the first season of the extended term will equal the max annual salary applicable to such player in the first season of the extended term, or, in the case of a rookie scale extension for a first-round pick who has met at least one of the fifth-year max criteria, may instead provide in the extension that the first year will equal X% of the salary cap. And it will also, that X will be no less than 25% or any greater than 30%. So they could be eligible for that max 30 if they satisfy, as in that rookie extension, one of those criteria. Now, in the case of another first round pick who has not yet met one of those 30 max criteria, then their first year in their extension will equal 25% of the cap. Or if they meet, they can provide that if they meet at least one of the fifth-year max criteria during the fourth season, then X amount of the salary cap will be in effect during the first season. In no event, it'll be less than 25% or greater than 30%, however. Now, the team may instead provide that in the extension for the first season, that in no event there'll be less than 25% or greater than the 30% based on how and whether the player satisfies the applicable fifth-year max criteria. Now, as an example of the bracket, you can say that if you reach an All-NBA second team, you'll get 27%. All-NBA first team, 28%. NBA MVP, 30%. And so they can fluctuate or vary based on what criteria it is that you meet, but as long as it's somewhere between 25 and 30%. Salaries in any season after the first season of the extended term will be increased or decreased by a different percentage based on the percentage of the salary cap. That is a provision that can be provided as well. And they'll be specified in the contract. A designated rookie scale player extension must provide for annual increases in salary for each season following the first season of the extended term, equal to 8% of the salary for the salary cap year covered by the first season of the extended term. A rookie scale extension entered into pursuant to this section may not include any incentive compensation. Now, for the designated veteran player extension for the first season, it can be provided that there's an X percent of the salary and where the percentage to be included where the brackets are in no event be less than 30% or greater than 35%. And so they can actually put whatever they want in those brackets as well based on them meeting certain criteria. And it will be increased or decreased based on the percentages. And a designated veteran player extension entered into pursuant to this subsection may also not include any incentive compensation. So the rules are pretty much the same for the 30-year max, or using those brackets in the percent, or the 35% max. Section 7F mentions in the event that a player is traded and any trade bonuses that were included in his contract that could cause it to exceed those maximum amounts, then the trade bonus shall be deemed as amended to the extent necessary to reduce the player's salary, plus unlikely bonuses to the maximum amount allowed, as mentioned. Section 7G. Notwithstanding any other provision in the agreement, any contract or rookie scale extension entered into between a fifth-year eligible player and a team that provides for salary plus unlikely bonuses in the first season covered by the contract or rookie scale extension greater than 25% of the salary cap in the first season or extended term must be for at least 4 seasons, excluding any option year, and in the case of a rookie scale extension, excluding the last season covered by the player's rookie scale contract. Section 8, promotional activities. Players are required to make 7 individual personal appearances, at least 2 of which shall be in connection with season ticket holder events, and 5 group appearances for or on behalf of or at the request of the team or a team affiliate. Up to 2 of these 12 appearances may be assigned by the team and or the NBA in any year to NBA properties. The player shall be reimbursed for the actual expenses. They'll receive compensation of $3,500 for each promotional appearance they make for a commercial sponsor of such team. A player that makes at least 8 appearances for each subsequent appearance for a commercial sponsor, they'll receive $4,500. Any personal group appearance must take place during the period from the first day of the season through the day of the NBA draft following such season, or to the off season. No player is required to make more than 1 off-season appearance, unless he resides in or is otherwise located in the area where the appearance will take place. Also, it should occur in the home city of the player's team, or in the city to which the player has traveled to play in a scheduled NBA game. It should not occur at a time that would interfere with preparation to play or practice. It should be scheduled with the player at least 14 business days or 14 days in advance by providing written notice, and then call to his attention again 7 days prior to the appearance. It should not exceed a reasonable period of time and not require the player to sign autographs as the primary purpose of the appearance. The player participates in reasonable fan appreciation activities before and after home games. No player should be required to participate in more than 4 of such activities per season. The team shall be required to track promotional appearances, and the NBA shall provide the Players Association with the list, and 2 weeks prior to the date of each report. In the season, December 31st, February 28th, April 30th, and July 31st is when that list will be provided. The player shall wear a wireless microphone during any game or practice, including warm-up periods and going to and from the locker room to the playing floor. The rights of the audio should belong to the NBA or league-related entity. Now, this is upon request by the team. This is when the player needs to do that. The player audio will be screened and approved before being released. And in the event that a player believes that any player audio excerpt would be prejudicial or detrimental to him, and the player needs to notify the NBA in writing within 120 hours of recording such audio, and then the league will not produce or will not incorporate or license the audio in that event. No player without his consent may be required to wear a wireless microphone for nationally televised games, more than one game per month in any regular season. For playoff games, more than 2 games per playoff round. The player audio shall not be used as the basis for the imposition of discipline upon any player. Each player should be required to participate in promotional activities for the benefit of the NBA's television partners, provided that such participation does not exceed 1 hour per player per season. The player will also be reimbursed for any expenses. Section 9, 10-day contracts. Beginning on January 5th of any NBA season, a team may enter into a contract where the longer of 10 days or a period encompassing 3 games played by such team, or a 10-day contract. The salary for the 10-day contract shall not be less than the minimum player salary. No team may enter into a 10-day contract with the same player more than twice during the course of any one season. The team may not be a party at any one time to more 10-day contracts than the following. So, if there are 12 players, we're talking about the aggregate number of players on the team's active list and inactive list, including players signed to 10-day contracts, but not including two-way players. And then versus the maximum number of team players who can be signed to 10-day contracts. So if there are 12 then on the roster, then you can have none. If there are 13 on the roster, you can have 1. 14, you can have 2. 15, you can have 3. No team may enter into a 10-day contract if the length of such contract would extend to or past the date of the team's last regular season game for such season. A 10-day contract shall be terminated simply by providing written notice to the player and not by following the waiver procedure. Paying only such sums that are set forth in Exhibit 1A or, if applicable, Exhibit 1. That's all that the team will have to do. That's pretty straightforward. Section 10, rest of season contracts. At any time after the first day of NBA regular season, a team may enter into a player contract that may provide compensation to a player only for the remainder of that season, or a rest of season contract. The salary provided shall be no less than the minimum player salary. That concludes Articles 7 through 10, covering maximum annual salary, promotional activities, 10-day contracts, and rest of season contracts, pages 35 through 49. Happy studying. See you at the top.